In Tennessee, about an hour west of Knoxville, is the Brushy Mountain, what's called the Brushy Mountain Development. Formerly the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. It was a state penitentiary which opened in 1895 and closed in 2009, and by all accounts was a pretty brutal prison, as they all are, but perhaps especially so. But before that, that area was the site of a year-long insurrectionary campaign by unionized miners who rose up against the coal industry and the state of Tennessee, and in particular the reliance of both on the convict lease system. And over the course of the year, they raided mines and burnt down stockades and freed black convict leases and sent them to Knoxville. And really sort of brought the state of Tennessee to the brink of crisis, such that the state became the first southern state to end the practice of convict leasing. So it was this incredible victory of struggle. But the state's response to that struggle was to enclose 9,000 acres and build Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, and subsequently to force prisoners, now held within the walls of Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, to mine coal for the state of Tennessee, in opening several mines just outside the grounds up in the mountains surrounding the prison, where prisoners would be forced to mine coal just about around the clock. Part of what Brushy Mountain did during the period where they forced prisoners to mine coal, which was into the mid-1960s, is they housed 4 prisoners at a time in a cell built for 2. And the way they did that was by having 2 prisoners constantly mining coal on 12-hour shifts. So they had prisoners mining coal around the clock. And that both saved the prison administration and ultimately the state of Tennessee money in terms of revenue, because they didn't have to build twice the number of cells to house as many people, but it also made the state profit by producing that much more coal. Yep. I mean, that's the history there, right? Is like hundreds of years of extraction and,
Right.
and now incarceration. I mean, you can certainly think of incarceration as a form of extraction too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And certainly the families who have loved ones caged.
They're extracted from their community. Yeah.
From communities and families.
Yep, exactly.
Never up. Well, I'm going down the Mobile Road, bring women back by the wagon load. Do that, do man, do well, I don't know, but I believe I will make my home in Jacksonville.
My name is Sarah Bryant. I was incarcerated as a child. Went to prison when I was 15 years old, and I did 10 years. I did 10 years on paper, and now I'm off parole, but I'm also a mother of 3. When I was 15 years old, I chose to roam people, places, and things. I ended up around a group of people that chose to rob and kill a young man. I did not know that it was about to happen, but I knew after it happened. And I chose to do nothing. Inaction sometimes can be the greatest evil of all, but I chose inaction, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't help. I just ran. That's what I've always been taught to do, is run. Don't look back. And I did that. I ended up at CCA, which is a private prison. They kept me in solitary confinement until I was 18 years old. They were not set up to house juveniles. I believe I was one of the first female juvenile offenders that they had received. And so with that being said, I got a shower maybe once a week. I never seen the outside unless it was through my window. I had a sand mattress that laid on a metal slate. And all I remember is the four walls, just the four walls. The color of them, the concrete floor, the metal toilet. And I still remember the four walls. I still have nightmares about it. I still wake up in the middle of the night screaming. My body seizing, locking up. I don't see anything that was beneficial about it. I had to literally beg for pen and paper. No music, no interaction with human life, only the guards. And I think what I did most was exercise and talk to myself, which is something I still do to this day. I got the light that was in my cell that never went out. After my first year, I had complained so much to the guards that one of them was kind enough to go and get me time in, it's called a rec cube, and it had a fence around it and a wall around the fence, which I didn't understand why it had both. And then it had a shelter on top, and I could see the light go around in a little crack. It had a little space in it, and I could see the light. So no trees, no sun, no moon, no stars, no nothing. Just that little crack of light. So, and they did that for me maybe once a week as well, depending on how many staff they had.
I think it definitely says that there's an acceptance of the person's worthlessness that is very inhumane. Like there's a place where when we as a society, as a systematic view and have a systematic purpose that allows us to discard people's humanity and their lives in a way that it can not only be profited off of, but there's no regard for the humanity of an individual. Like, it's a powerful thing. Like, it's a very detrimental thing to our social understanding of who we are as people. Like, it's crazy when you think about it. You think about how the system ultimately thrives off of its willingness to discard people's humanity and their relevance in our society and community.
Well, the warden
Warden stands tall as he walks down the hall, puts all our lives on a shelf, holding the keys to our misery. How does he live with himself?
The communities that I see the prisons in, they're poor. Those people are poor people. I don't see the houses are run down. You know, the town, it's not a built-up town. It's a poor little town, you know, with McDonald's. If the prison is the job that's supposed to be helping people, you'd have to drive so far to get to town, you know, and I see no benefit. I see no benefit at all. And I'm mad. I don't want to be mad. Sometimes when my son calls me and I got people in behind him screaming and yelling and threatening, I'm so mad. I curse my beloved son. I told him I hated him. I don't hate my son. I hate what he's going through, what these prisons have put him through, and not just him. The poor woman that was here before me, the other family members, the ones who have lost their sons to murder, to addiction. Maybe there's probably more people, addicts, who have died that we don't know anything about. The ones who have hopeless and they have ended their own lives. No, I don't want that for my son or anybody else. I'm tired of living that life. I'm tired of feeling like there's no hope or help.
Are you so different than me? Hey, Warden, Warden, what does it mean to be free?
So something like 350 new prisons have been built in rural areas of the United States since the 1980s, corresponding to the rise in what we call and understand as mass incarceration. Those prisons were marketed to those rural communities as sort of quote-unquote solutions to various crises, usually of unemployment and revenue loss and things like that with the departure of industry. Where the data is absolutely clear is that in those rural communities that are distressed, to use the term that's usually applied to those that are in the most sort of severe economic depression, prisons not only don't provide rural economic development, they can actually sometimes cause further sort of immiseration to those communities. So where I work in Central Appalachia and in Eastern Kentucky in particular, that's largely been the consequence of rural prison building. I haven't come across any politician or prison booster who is enthusiastic about prisons specifically, right? They, like many people, are proposing prisons because in this historical moment, that is the way that the state kind of manifests itself manifests an economic opportunity or economic development to rural communities. But the way that then that proposal then gets communicated to residents, and then the way that residents kind of internalize the prison is that, it becomes the key to their ability to imagine a future for themselves or their children or grandchildren. So Martin County, if it sounds familiar to you or to people who might be watching, that's probably because it was the site, or its county seat, which is Inez, is where the War on Poverty was launched. Those iconic images of Lyndon Johnson on the porch of a sawmill worker, those were taken in Martin County. So the War on Poverty is launched in Inez. It also has some of the most heavily strip-mined land in the region. And in 2000, both because of the degree of strip mining, but also because of the degree of deep mining and the instability of the land, in 2000, it was also the site of this horrendous environmental disaster, a disaster so large that the EPA at the time said it was the worst environmental disaster in the history of the southern United States. 306 million gallons of coal slurry burst through a very sort of thin wall and out into all of these tributaries and then into rivers and whatnot. It killed over 1 million fish and poisoned the water of 27,000 residents. So that was in 2000. In 2003, the most expensive federal prison was built in the county. And it became the most expensive federal prison built in the history of the United States, in part because in the middle of construction, it was revealed that part of the guard tower and another area of the prison were literally sinking into the abandoned mine shaft below it. And so the federal government had to sink in all of these extra millions of dollars for site remediation just to stabilize the foundation of the prison. And so it wound up costing something like $350 million. Today, in 2020, Martin County residents, Martin County is in the middle of a severe water crisis, due in part to the spill, but also due in part to just dilapidated water infrastructure. I think something like 60% of their water leaks out of the pipes. And what this means, what this translates to for residents, is they can't drink or bathe in the water. And there's a lot to say about that, but to me, it raises a number of sort of fundamental points. One, that when we look at that county, we might identify a concept like safety as residing exclusively in the prison, as opposed to the fact that Martin County residents can't drink water precisely because of decisions made by corporate executives and state officials. But also, too, the solutions for a crisis like that, where residents can't drink the water, or the funding for those solutions, isn't absent. It's there. It just lines the pockets of billionaire coal executives and a federal prison. I mean, it's literally sunk into an infrastructure, a racialized infrastructure of exclusion and captivity.
Do I think prisons are good for the economy? No. You get out of prison and the goal is to be a productive member of society. But the way that the institutions are set up, and when I say institutions, I mean the way things work, the little mechanics of jobs, housing, schools, funding, help, the way it's set up, it's not set up to help. And so you come out here and try to give back to society and put yourself in that role, and it's basically impossible. How can I contribute to the economy if you won't let me? Background checks prevent me. I mean, it took forever to find a job. It just kept popping up. Now keep in mind, I had not been in trouble since that day. I believe I was charged at 16. So I had not been charged since I was 16 with anything. Not even a wreck, any traffic ticket, anything. But every time I went to apply for a job, it popped up, hey, she's a felon. And I got no's after no's after no's. And when I finally did find a job, never missed a day, good worker, they changed the insurance policy. And the insurance policy says, hey, if you have a convicted felon working under you, then we have to raise your rates 3 times the amount. So what the company did was say, okay, we're going to let her go. And they told me, this is not because of you, but we can't afford to keep you. We have to let you go. That is the cycle. And now I understand why recidivism is so high. I understand why, people come out here and it's like, what do I have? What can I get? Nothing. Who's going to help? Nothing. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to be what I can be. I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do. But it's like being submerged and tied down with a rock. You're just under that water drowning and drowning and drowning and drowning. And you keep knocking at doors and nobody wants to open. Nobody. No, it's not good for the economy.
And so I don't know that we can say that the dynamic of America today is truly reflective of the American people. I just think the American people not getting involved. And if they're not involved, it's not a reflection of them because they absent. It's like really everybody in prison. Right? Everybody in their own little prison. If it ain't TV, it's their cell phone, it's they don't want to be involved, or they feel like that's not their people. I mean, for whatever the reason, people have just become absent, and in their absence they become silent, and because of their silence they're not being heard. And so we're kind of stuck with these companies and conglomerates and administrative heads who decide that if they're not going to speak, if they're not going to do anything, we're just going to utilize them the best way we can, and whether it be to make money or whether it be to create forms of entertainment that ultimately make money. I mean, the consumer has become the target, and because we don't pay attention and we don't hold them accountable, they are now targeting us in any way they feel possible, any way that they feel, that they can make a buck. And if that includes sending you to prison, detaining you in a detention center, or locking people up just because they Latino. And I think probably more than anything that I would like to see is that politicians definitely become accountable for who they are and what they do. Like I don't know why that, excuse me, but I don't know why that we feel like that they can just do what they want to do.
How does the warden sleep at night after the long day's through?
I'm tired of the poor being targeted because we're poor, I'm supposed to be in a Christian area. Where are you, and why aren't you listening, and why aren't you fighting for your people? These are your people that are locked up. Your brothers and husbands and nephews.
When the warden goes home to his house made of stone, how does he get any rest? How does the warden sleep at night after the long day's through? Does he toss and turn? Does his conscience burn? Is he a prisoner too?